This is a Bulldog Radio podcast.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the MVSP, the most valuable sports podcast. My name's Brandon Worth, and I'm joined today with my co-host, co-partner, best friend, Joe Nagy. What's up?
I'm your best friend?
I think you got to be in that conversation.
I know. I think I got... you're in that conversation for me too,
Aww,
Brandon.
Heart emoji.
Oh,
audio
yeah,
medium.
love to see it. But, today's a pretty good day. Beautiful day outside today. Pretty solid weekend of Ferris State sports. And a great weekend that's going to be coming up later. But we'll talk about that Thursday. But we do have a pretty solid Ferris State sports report to talk about, as well as Adam Langworthy joining on with us later on in the show. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, obviously March Madness, MLB free agency kicking off. Don't forget to check out that part of the episode. That'll be linked in our description, which also, if you don't check out our episodes descriptions, what are you doing? We tell you.
How do you even know what we're going to talk about then?
We tell you everything.
You must be on the edge of your seat every time you put the podcast on.
Yeah, which is also cool. But if you want specific topics for all the stuff that we talk about on the show, go to the description, find the topic you want to listen to. We even got a time code. Boom, click.
Respect to
instant
both.
There. I can literally move the cursor over to that section of time for you automatically.
That's crazy.
Well, actually, I don't do that. Anchor does that, though, and we love to work with Anchor and all the things that they do for our podcast. But right into the Ferris State Sports Report we go. It went down this weekend. Anchor down. Of course, the tennis GLIAC openers on the tennis matches was certainly fun to see. Men's tennis getting the win, the 6-1.
Dominating win, if I might say. Dominating win.
Absolutely. Women definitely had their fair share of good matches, but ultimately coming up short against the Lakers. But we'll start off with the men's, of course. 6-1 win, dominating fashion. And of course,
doubles was solid, dude. Yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah. In the quote of Coach Mark Doran, the men were outstanding today and came out firing on all cylinders in double play. When you hear all cylinders, you know that train's rolling. Literally.
Especially when you look at it like Jan and Matisse, they're really playing really solid. I don't think other than like the Florida trip, they haven't really lost at home yet so far this season. And even with McDermott and or Josh McDermott and Ayush Deswell, like those two guys, even though they're at number 3 spot there, like they're really solid and they've been able to pick up a lot of paces of play. And I think that's the most important part that we've been able to see success so much in the doubles is that, we keep the energy up and that kind of carries through, especially when, with the racket center, it's all 4 courts are like right next to each other. So you see everybody playing and you can kind of get the crowd involved a little bit. You can get the people watching involved a lot more. And when you have that energy up, it's really tough to be able to overcome that if you're the opposing team. And I think that's the one reason why we're able to play so solid, even all throughout singles and all throughout doubles.
Yeah, I was unfortunately not able to come to this game Saturday due to family commitments, but there was a lot that I heard on the energy of the game this weekend. I heard the national champion football team was in town over at the Racket Center, so they had some support there. That was cool to see. But yeah, the energy sounded like it was off the charts. GLIAC opener indoors, certainly a fun time. It's going to get rowdy in there, but dominating performances across the board. Doubles getting able to have the sweep there on the men's side and handily too. Not just wins, handily 6-3, 6-2, 6-3. That's pretty much winning at every single point. But the singles we did well. All but one really was just even losing one in singles. 6-1 still. That's such an impressive performance. Matisse able to knock out the GV's number 1 in a tough game. That was the one I noticed right away. Falling in the opening set 7-6 and then coming back for 2 straight 7-6 wins in extra points. So that was really cool to see. And I think that was Jan was kind of in a similar scenario as well that you just talked about, Joe. Down 6-3 and then getting a 6-4, 6-3 comeback in the next 2 sets. And then the rest of the guys with Yannick, Ben, Alessandro taking care of business as well to end up getting the win and a well-needed win. Right now we're high up in the regional rankings, I would have to say, and we got to keep moving forward, right? If they left us off the regional board,
what are you doing?
You messed up, my friend.
What are you doing?
You'll regret that decision.
Exactly. But yeah, we played really solid. And the nice thing is Matisse obviously going to the third round, but like a lot of the other guys that are playing, they just kept their foot on the gas as soon as singles started. Like Benjamin played really solid, 6-4 and 6-2 win. Yannick played really good, same thing, 6-4, 6-2. And I mean, Alessandro took a second to kind of get in the driver's seat a little bit. He still won 6-4 in the first one, but then domination in the second set, 6-1. So other than Josh McDermott, who still played really solid, he still gave up a really good fight. Just couldn't get the clean sweep, which sucks, but I mean, you lose some every day, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some, right? That's the nature of competition. And I mean, GLIAC openers, obviously, everything's on the table early on to get a
GLIAC opener
kickstart
against the second, like the people who fell to us or we won the GLIAC over them.
The opponents to us in the tournament. I know exactly what you're saying. So what I'm seeing from, especially on the men's side, we'll get into the women's side in just a minute as well, they're playing better each and every set on in each match. Translate that into the season, we haven't even reached our full potential yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting. That is really exciting. And for a team that just came off of a conference championship, the fact that we're going to be even getting better, that's very exciting to see. The program has been built, and Coach Jordan's done a great job with this crew, and they've played really, really well, really clean, really just overall fantastic tennis is really the word that comes to mind. There's not like an analytical word. It's just great. It's just clean. It's smart, and really it's next level. And it's really exciting to see. But women's end up coming up just short 5-2 against the Lakers, a tough Lakers team. And obviously not the result you wanted. They put up certainly a good fight, I would say. And I mean, Grand Valley has some great women's players as well. Just slip up a little bit. No, just like we talked about, it happens, right? It happens.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're still able to get a couple of the top pairing wins. I mean, obviously getting the number one in doubles was huge for Nolan and Clack. I mean, not only that, 6-zip clean sweep in that match, but I mean, all the rest of the players still played well. Just wasn't their day, and that's really what happened, and it really kind of stinks in this scenario. And I mean, especially for some of them, how tight they were. I know the threes match went into a 7-6, 6-4 with Aglada Clack and Vizio Griva, so that was a tough one. And then Parker Nolan and Taylor Barrett, which we ended up getting the win on. In the singles, went to 3 sets, as well as Brittany Lavinen's 6-set win as well. So really tough competition all weekend for this crew. Obviously, some of the results we just wish would have been flipped around, but long season left. And like we said, they're playing better, and we're really looking forward to seeing that translate over towards postseason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
didn't really have anything to add to it.
No other way to say it right there. So,
exactly.
Yeah, but anyway, moving on over to the Diamond. Softball was in action over the weekend, and less games than we really expected. Lots of weather going down south in Ohio over the weekend, I guess. Some rain, some nasty storms. Sounded pretty G-Rose if you ask me, but we end up getting to play Findlay yesterday, if you're listening to this podcast right away on Tuesday, which if you are, shout out to you. If maybe you're listening on Wednesday, was on Monday in a tough regional game against Findlay. It was a tough one. I'm not gonna lie, it was a really tough one, and it was really hard to see. Really, especially in the first game, we were in the driver's seat. We got the early lead. We were winning 4-up going into the bottom of the 5th, and then the Oilers just let loose. They tied us up 4-4 going into the 6th, and then the final 6th inning. Gee whiz. Which, I mean, it's just tough to go in that scenario of having a team run you out literally off the field in one inning of play, but that's exactly what they did. They came alive, and it was really just a tough thing to see overall because they were playing so well. And then obviously going into the following doubleheader, the second part, they just really nothing you could control after that. It was just really tough to bounce back in that sort of environment. And Findlay took that momentum and just rode it completely over. And they're a good team, and you got to give them credit. They played really well.
Yeah, true. I mean, Findlay, 19-7, that's really tough, especially when you come out with 7 runs in the first inning. That first inning jump is always something that you really want to see for any team. But I think the one good thing we can look forward to is that next week we're actually returning home, which is pretty solid. Or sorry, the weekend after, I think. I can't even remember now. But anyways, we still got Saginaw Valley coming up next week, which will be pretty solid. Or sorry, this upcoming Saturday. I'm getting my dates all sorts of mixed up, Brandon, my bad.
Yeah.
But we got Saginaw Valley coming up, who's, middle of the GLIAC, especially opening up our GLIAC play is going to be really solid. It's a fresh start. We're still playing pretty solid for preseason, but when regular season starts, that's when it all comes down to it. And I think we're going to honestly play pretty solid because we've been able to get the bats alive in a lot of games and been able to get a lot of runs, even in games that we've lost. But I don't know, Saginaw, they've been a team that kind of struggled a little bit last year getting the bats going. When they did not stop. That's the one thing that definitely has to happen is defense got to be solid. But I think if we can just step up and get our offensive game up a little bit compared to, Findlay, and kind of getting that early start out there and kind of be in the driver's seat, especially with, those later innings, is going to be really solid. But I don't know. Saginaw is going to be a good test to start the season.
Yeah, we're going to be home next Tuesday, actually, a week from today. We'll be playing Lewis in a non-conference regional homestand, so that'll be fun. But I think the biggest thing, too, as I'm more looking over this, is there was a lot of tight spots we were put in throughout this game, especially down the stretch in the first game, and then obviously ending up in the rollover in the second game when they unleashed a monstrous start to the second. Yeah, going down 18-3 after 2 innings. That is a tough hill to climb, but still great performances. And I think the biggest thing was we're playing a lot of the younger players as well. Christina Barr was in the final inning against Findlay in those parts of it, and that Findlay got to her a little bit, and that's nothing against her. Obviously, those are just those tough things of when you're in the situation of playing your first couple of games at the collegiate level. There's things that you don't expect coming, and when they do, you just kind of, oh shoot, how do I react to that? And that's where you see a lot of these veteran teams like Findlay being able to see them control the tempo of the game, make it in their run, and be able to really carry it over, especially on their home field. That makes it super difficult to go into that environment. But still, a lot of good things coming ahead. We're still early in the season. Like I said, every single time we talk about a lot of these teams, there's still time. We're analyzing as the game, but we still got 2 months left. So there's lots of time for them to dial it in, critique, and get this team rolling. But some pretty cool stats over the weekend from these games. Amara Zukowski hit a dinger in game 2, dinger alert, as well as Kylie Winkles, Casey Boucher with a couple of doubles in game 2, as well as Paige Court with 2 base hits, including a double in game 1. Caitlin Orme with a triple as well. Aaron Gallagher, 5 1/3 innings. In game 1, he's got a tough spot down the stretch as well, but still a lot of good offensive performances. But like we said, just got to get a little bit better on the pitching side defensively, and then against some of these really good hitting teams, and then we're going to be in much better shape going forward because we're putting on the offensive, we're getting the runs. We still put across 11 over 2 games, which is pretty solid. Just Findlay they really just had the bats rolling in these ones.
Findlay was just ridiculous. So you can't really do much about that. But it's a new week. It's a new day. Saturday's coming up, and I think we're going to be doing pretty solid when we get to SVSU.
Absolutely. We'll look forward to that. All information on ferrisstatebulldogs.com. But transitioning now over to the links, golf was in action over the weekend at the SVSU Spring Invite. Pretty solid performances from our squad of Bulldogs. Tied for 7th on the men's side, only trailing, I believe, Wayne State, and we were tied with Northwood as fellow GLIAC foes. Overall, pretty solid. They did really well, especially with the transition from round 1 to round 2. That was a huge bonus that I saw, and I think that was a big thing with a lot of the teams at the top, especially, is we saw, early on we had a 314 first round, and then cut that down to 292 in the second round. That's a huge swing, and then frankly, really just some of those teams started off a little bit better going into that cut down. Like Findlay had 295 in round 1, and then they cut it down to 294. So we ended up playing better than them in the second round, but they just had a more consistent first round, and that's why they were second compared to us in 7th. But still, really good performances from, the men's side for sure. We saw Thomas Herseg doing really well individually. He was top 10, I think 9th officially, with 2 under rounds in the opening round, and then, 7th in the final round, 2 under after 76. So that improvement is good to see, and I think we're seeing that with a lot of the spring sports pretty much, actually, is a lot of it starting off a little slow and then getting better over on. But still, a lot of good things we saw from this team. And I think really the 7th place finish out of, let me say, a lot of teams. I literally had to scroll down the list to like all 19 teams, and they're all pretty reputable teams as well. So really good performances overall from this group.
Yeah, for sure. And the good thing, too, is you see a lot of the GLIAC teams in there as well. I mean, Saginaw's there. Davenport's there. I mean, we fell to Northwood and Wayne State. But, when you look at where we're at now, kind of compared to a lot of these teams that we'll be seeing throughout the rest of the season, and especially when it comes GLIAC playoffs and stuff like that, I love where we're at, especially seeing that, one golfer maybe has a birdie on a hole where we're up there past Northwood just by one because we tied with them for 7th. Wayne State in 4th by 6 shots. That's just one bad day on the golf course. So the one good thing too when you look at it is it's just basically a little bit more improvement, and we'll be right there winning these tournaments. And I think we got a really good shot to make it far for this GLIAC, for at least the GLIAC tournament when we come to it, and we're able to possibly get back to back. But it's going to be a lot of work, and I think that we can do it, especially only having 3 or 4 more tournaments to play.
Yeah, especially
3. We got the Findlay Spring Invite, the Cab Classic, Bill Blazer, and then we got the GLIAC Championships.
Ooh, that's quick. But I think in reality, there's so much work that goes in over the tournament because, obviously you're playing 36 holes at least in these formats. So a lot of things you can adjust with and you can change over. So, but still, great performances. We saw a couple guys that just had a couple rough days. A couple double bogeys happen here and there, and that stuff happens. So obviously looking forward to seeing that improvement going over from the men's side. The women's side also did very well this weekend. Really have gotten to see a lot of good things so far all together going into, I think actually they just finished day 1 yesterday. So, but from that point, we've seen some good things right now. I believe overall in the standings, we are sitting 9th, if I remember. Yes, 9th overall at 20 over par as of the 3rd round. So we're looking pretty good as of now, halfway through the field. But now going into today, actually, will be moving day, and we'll see how they do it in the 2nd round as well. But seeing a lot of good things. Daniel Stokowski had a great first round with Elena Eldred and Hope Thiebaud, our top 2 going in, I think, to this season, really moving forward overall. So a lot of good things to see from this team as well, and hopefully seeing that same improvement that we saw from the men's side, being able to really climb the ladder in round 2.
Exactly. That's just the name of the game so far. Later in the season, it's just making sure you can get ready for when the time counts when it comes to those conference tournaments.
Yeah. You look at kind of where golf is at right now, and you're sitting at a spot of, they had a whole fall season of a lot of exhibition tournaments. Being able to play at home, and you kind of go into the end of October. Now you're off till March. Now it's kind of just that whole reset of cycle again. And that's kind of where we sit at right now. And I think the reality is, you'd mentioned it, Joe, three left, right? But we're playing for 5. And that's kind of where can you get the 3 in their best place to get the 5. And that's really where a lot of these bigger tournaments, the Cab Classic especially, will be one where I think really be a stepping stone for us moving up, because you have these really good competition-wise tournaments, and you're used to the traveling. That's kind of your last tune-up of, this is where we got into. What else do I need to fix right now going into GLIACs? And then that tournament's going to be huge for us, because the GLIAC Championship is certainly one that we have circled. Obviously if we get to Kansas City or we get to Gainesville for natties and regionals, we'll get to there. But that's the number one priority right now, because trophy chasing. That's really all it is going back here in this year.
Exactly. We want them trophies. We want them bad boys bad.
Yeah. Winning last year, I feel like it's just a culture. It's like, yeah, we won another one. Let's go win another one. Let's go win a 3rd one.
Winning culture at Ferris State is pretty sick.
There is. And you know who represents that really well? The football team. Obviously, spring practice coming on for the reigning national champions. Schedule just announced over, I believe it was Monday. Loaded schedule, can I say the least? And
this is going to be arguably the hardest schedule, I think.
One of the hardest, I would say,
for anybody in D2. We got Central Washington, who we played 2 years ago in one of the, I think it was like D2 highlighted game of the week or whatever.
Yep.
We went out to Washington, absolutely stomped them, but they made the playoffs last year, so that one's going to be a pretty solid one. Lenore Rhine is a team who made the playoffs as well. That's going to be solid. Waldorf is who will be playing next at home on September 24. They're at like a NAIA school or something like that, but they're ridiculously good. I think is what I saw like in the page for what it was. I'll try to find it real quick.
Yeah, that's a team. I mean, Waldorf was the one that I was like, I hadn't heard about. I knew the rumors about Leonore Ryan, and I heard that announcement going into the season. But I mean, you have a return trip to Eastern Washington Central Washington, and then obviously we got the Oilers on October 1st, which does not matter record-wise. That game's going to end in a barn burner every single time, it seems like. Last year was a little bit of an exception, but I mean, then you got obviously a tough GLIAC schedule as it is, playing Saginaw and then Grand Valley and then Michigan Tech back-to-back-to-back. Those are really good programs as well. And then you had in Waldorf, who honestly, to me, seems like a wild card team, but do not overlook because, I mean, they pretty much had one of their best seasons last year at the NAIA level. They had 7 wins, and I mean, they're a pretty good team. And I think right now,
they ain't half bad.
Yeah, they're pretty good. So don't sleep on top of them, because that's the last thing we can do in this scenario. But I don't know exactly if this is how it is planned out, because there's currently a bye week in week 3 and September 17th week, and I'm very curious to see if that is going to be the official bye week stamped down, which I'm assuming it is, since the fact that we just released this, or if they were going to be trying to plug in a third game or a week 3 game. But I mean, I really like how this is, because it gets you those 2 opening games, the really tough competition. Then you gear it back, you come back to Top Taggart for Waldorf, and then you gear up for that rest of the season run, especially being a lot closer. Because I mean, Central Washington will be at home. Then we're gonna have to travel to Leonore Ryan, which is a little bit of a hike, I would say, like a long little long bus ride. And
I think they're taking a plane for that one.
They might take a plane for that one. Who knows? But yeah, I really like the schedule. I like how challenging it is. That just shows you that we're tough. We're ready. Let's run it back. And I think it's going to be fun to see how this goes going on here into 2022.
That's the one thing, is it's solid enough where I think if we just play as good as we know we can, and we play with no mistakes like we're used to, we're going to really run the table, I think, and I think we're going to be really solid. I'm more interested to see when the summer kind of comes to a conclusion where they put us in the preseason polls, especially with us kind of losing some of our guys on the offensive line, and kind of losing some of those defensive players that really stood out last year. And I mean, losing Jared Bernhardt is a big one as well, but I think still we'll probably be, my prediction is we'll probably be top 5 at least, if not top 3, because I mean, I could see if like we don't get number 1 because we don't. I mean, I don't know. I guess I wonder like how much of a national like how much that kind of adds into it for like whatever. Because what were we last year? Like what, number 6?
I think going into the season we were somewhere around 5 or 6. Then we climbed up to 2 or 3, and then we were like, yeah, this is our year, basically over halfway through. Because I think there was a lot of skepticism after the Saginaw Valley game. Played one of our worst games, hands down. Like so many turnovers, and we still won.
But then once we beat GV, didn't we get first?
We beat number 1. We beat Grand Valley, and then we went on. Yeah, and that was pretty much the turning point, because it was kind of us and flip flop at that moment going into that matchup. But I mean, I really like where we're at as far. I think it's going to be interesting noting like the change as far as the schedule of like homecoming is now going to be like, that's going to be the Waldorf game in September, not necessarily one of the late GLIAC games like it was this year. I think it was against Northern, like November 5th or whatever, like week 9 or something. And now it's going to be in week 4. So that's going to be a little bit of a change. I mean, obviously the biggest one, Anchor Bones coming back to Top Taggart, baby. That's going to be for that one. So much fun. So I think this is going to be a great schedule. A lot of good competitive teams early out the gate. That just shows that Coach Anise is ready to get back to where we left off back in December. So I'm looking forward to this team. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we do. And I mean, obviously, we're going to get more information on what the team's looking like, depth chart moving around as we get through spring practices. And obviously, spring game coming up late April. You can come out and watch. It's going to be fun to see.
It's going to be fun to work that one, too.
Yeah. Gonna have to work that one, unfortunately, probably.
Why do you say unfortunately?
Unfortunately, because I might
have free food.
Well, no, because that'll be like a weekend of meet, so it's gonna be like shaky as far as my schedule is concerned. That is not unfortunate. I'll work every football game if I could, but I mean that'll be kind of a tough spot for me. But I'm still going to see what this team does, and I'm really looking forward to this team, because last year was incredible. One of the most finest years I've had covering a team ever, and I want to do it again. I want to go. I want to go.
A blast.
I want to go sit in McKinney ISD Stadium's press box with all the Division II teams and being the only media member up there, just looking at me every time Jared Bernhardt touched the ball and found the end zone. Like I was just this crazy man, and I was like, "Yeah, this is who Ferris State is."
Ridiculous, dude.
It was awesome. I enjoyed every minute of everybody just looking at me like, "Your team is so good," and I'm just like, "Yeah, we are.
We're ridiculous."
Guys, take me back. I want to do it again. We need to do it again.
I want to go back down there and be in the crowd, dude. That was ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Joe got the full experience. You were even on national TV like
I was
5
on
times.
national TV.
I mean,
I was
this
in the
guy
front
got
row.
screen time.
I was in the front row having a blast, stormed the field. It was a good time.
It was a great time. I wonder if we got fined for sprinting on the field.
I don't think so.
I'll be interested, though, because I heard the rumors that could have been a possibility, but it's a natty.
It's a natty.
Is it
it's
worth
our first
it?
one. Why not?
So, yeah. But anyway, that's the Ferris State Sports Report. For more information, you can check it out on the website or as well as fall in our future shows coming up this next week. But we're going to take a quick break. Right back we come. Friend Adam joins the show, MLB and March Madness. Stay tuned.
When Brandon and I first started our podcast, we didn't know really what to do. Bulldog Radio helped us out, but the one big thing that really made us really go to the next level was Anchor.fm. If you want to start your own podcast, go through Anchor.fm. They make it so easy. They make it a one-stop shop for you to record, edit, and publish your podcast. And not only that, they publish it to a whole bunch of different platforms for you to go on. I mean, we've talked about it. You got Castbox, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just to name a few. So if you guys want to start your own podcast, go on Anchor.fm. You can make your own account, start editing, start recording, and start publishing your podcast today.
And now we return from our quick little break here. And joining us in the studio, Adam Langworthy, a returning guest to the studio. Adam, welcome.
Bonjour.
Love the enthusiasm, boys. But we're going to hop right into some NCAA March Madness right now. Over the weekend, games got locked for the Sweet 16. They'll be returning in action on Thursday and Friday, the 24th and the 25th. Some great games coming up, fellas. What ones are kind of catching your eye? Have you been following it much, Adam?
Oh, yeah, a little bit. You know, Michigan State fan, so I'm assuming we're going to talk about that. Of course, conveniently you have me on here after they get eliminated. But
yeah, go Blue. You know how it is.
We wouldn't do that, would we, Joe?
Oh, we
but
wouldn't.
it's
fifth
all right.
year in a row we made the Sweet 16. No big deal.
Hey, we can't agree though. It's great not to be an Ohio State fan.
That's true.
Am I right?
That's
oh
true.
my gracious, what a great loss for them. Anyway, yeah, I mean there were some great games over the weekend, and honestly, one of the best ones was the one I unfortunately didn't have the chance to stay up and watch. Arizona TCU that went to overtime. The controversial tip in.
That one was crazy.
Oh my goodness, what a game that was! Shout out to TCU. I mean, they played phenomenal in the 2 games. I mean, they crushed Seton Hall. They didn't play like a 9 seed this tournament. That's for a fact. That team played fantastic. I mean, they crushed Seton Hall by 25 or 27 in the opening round, and then gave arguably the top team in the tournament, according to Andy Katz, in the Arizona Wildcats, all the way to overtime. But they get the win anyway, 85-80. That was a great game. Of course, we mentioned our Wolverines. Go Blue.
Yes, sir.
Being able to beat Tennessee. I'll tell you one thing, like everybody's kind of, oh, I wish we would have played Tennessee. Tennessee was a good team. They didn't play that well against us in the second half, but our defense stepped up, and we were able to make some shots in the second half, and I think that was huge, and I think that got us the win outright by the end.
My favorite part about that game was when Tennessee center, I forget his name, but he got like a hard layup on Dickinson and then put like his hand down by the floor.
I know what you're saying.
And then Dickinson
about.
goes up right next possession and just absolutely bodies the guy, gets the really hard and one. And then everybody on the bench and everybody in the crowd is just tapping their heads to let him know who's actual boss here. But I'm pretty excited for that one. I mean, they're going to be playing Villanova. They beat Ohio State. Love to see it. But it's a 2 versus 11 seed. So either Cinderella story continues or it ends right here. So hate to see it.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm all in on St. Peter's. Lifelong Peacock fan over here.
Peacocks, baby. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. I know me and Joe talked about this back in our bracket breakdown. I do remember saying that if there was any 15 seed I would take, it would have been St. Peter's, but golly, I wouldn't have been ready for what had to happen right now. The Peacocks, man, they're crushing it right now. I mean, able to beat Kentucky and Calipari, and then beating Murray, the 30-win Murray State Racers. So, I mean, they're on a roll right now. I mean, should we be concerned that they could move on and beat Purdue?
I don't know, because the thing is, I'm pretty sure their center is like 6'9", 6'10", or something like
Yeah,
that.
they're
And
smaller.
Purdue's center is like 7'4", 7'5",
Yeah.
and he's a big 7'4".
Hey.
So like that's like the only thing I think they're gonna have a problem with is just down in the paint. But I mean, you got Doug, you got Stash Doug, who's on your team. So I think when you're riding that, I think you're gonna have a pretty solid game. And Purdue, honestly, against Texas, they kind of struggled a little bit, kind of getting it. I mean, Texas kind of came back a little bit near the end, but they were able to pull away 81-71. But like, I don't know, Purdue started off really hot, number 1, and then they dropped down to all the way to number 3. So, you know, they've lost some games that they shouldn't have. So maybe it's gonna be another one.
I think the government needs to look into where they keep getting all these 7-footers. I like growing them in a lab. I don't understand
You
it.
got Haas a couple years ago, and then you got
Arms.
Now you got whoever this
But
guy
all these
is. I
like
forget his name.
7-foot German kids. It's like, is there like a 7-foot daycare or
It's
something?
Indiana
they
for you,
have,
man.
or-
It's just tall basketball players. They just grow
Cornfields.
up
I
there.
mean, they're feeding, I guess, a special diet or something. I think it started with Robbie Hummel, and then now it's just progressed of you're 7-foot center, you're a Boilermaker. It's just
that's just
natural
how it
and
works.
born. That's just how it works now, I guess. But I mean, Michigan we got to steal one of them. I mean, Dickinson's nice to have, so
Yeah, true.
at least we got our pair at one of them. But Moose is also very good. But I definitely would agree with Adam that it was unfortunate to see Michigan State's run come to an end. I mean, Davidson's game. Awesome. I thought that lived up to its expectations as a hype game. I mean, obviously, I'm Michigan State coming on top by 1, but I mean, Davidson really gave them all they can handle. I mean, that was a pretty tight contest. And Foster-Lair certainly played better, I feel like, when in his spot at Davidson than he did almost during his entire tenure at Michigan State. He's really grown as a Wildcat.
You got to feel bad for him because, like, he's fine, he's whatever, but, like, when he messes up, he messes up. Like, when he does something good, you know, he hits a 3, whatever, but when he messes up, it's like he gets stepped on and dunked on. Like, there's no in between for him. Either he's an absolute disaster out there or he's just okay.
Yeah, I could understand that. He made some big plays in that game, but, I mean, Davidson could shoot the rock. That's one thing we saw in this tournament, and that's really why they were favored as the 10 seed going into this game. But I mean, good kudos to Michigan State, and I mean, really giving Duke a whole run, and I mean, really almost should have beat that team just based on how the game flowed towards the end of the game. I know the last 6 minutes they were going on that huge run to take the lead. I know me and my buddies were watching from the rock. There might have been friendly wagers put on, some funny stories made that day. If you're listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there was that. I mean, Duke just couldn't miss the last 3 minutes, and they really put on a show, especially with, you know, Paulo Banchero stepping up and being big for them. So tough to see the Michigan State's run come to an end. And I mean, just another year having to play Coach K again. I guess the committee just wants to see that every single year.
They just want to see Izzo versus Coach K, but I mean, they're going to be taking on Texas Tech now, so that's going to be tough for them. I mean, Texas Tech is really solid on the defensive side, so to kind of hold them back, I think is going to be. It's going to be tough, but those two teams are really going to show out, I think.
Yeah, I guess from Adam, from your perspective, what do you think of, because I know I've talked to some Michigan State fans, and some of them are just absolutely sick of playing Coach K like every other year in the tournament. But, I mean, there's been years when like you beat them. That's just kind of the catalyst to pole vault you. What do you think on that?
I mean, I love playing the best teams because it's a fantastic game to watch. It's a nice win. All I know is that this Coach K farewell tour crap has got to be put out of its misery. Just stop. Just please, someone end this.
Exactly. I'm with you there too, because people are like, I don't know, he's had such a great impact on the game of college basketball, but they act like, because like Duke was trying to get it so that way they could play in Chicago, like in the Midwest or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And like, so that way they could play in Coach K's hometown. It's like, the guy is like a legendary basketball coach, but like we shouldn't just like give the like world to him just because he's retiring.
Yeah, and I don't think
we're not going to do the same thing for Tom Izzo, but like he did the same thing. We're not going to do the same thing for. They didn't do that for John Wooden when he retired. Like they didn't do anything crazy. He like I feel like they're kind of blowing his career like not out of proportion because he has a ridiculous amount of wins, but like they're blowing it out of proportion for like what a coach actually deserves when he retires.
Yeah,
know?
here's what I'll say on that. Coach K, his legacy, I mean, 45 years in the game of basketball, 40 years at Duke. I mean, his career is phenomenal. I mean, how many wins is he? Almost to 1,200 now coming up this week, I think is what it is.
Something, I'll fact check it.
Something like that. You can fact check me, Joe, or anybody that's listening can type in the chat or whatever. The biggest thing I feel like with that scenario is Coach K doesn't want that. Like we saw in his last game when they were playing at Cameron and playing UNC, and then he lost. And what was the first thing he said? Is like, no, I don't want to hear it. Like, we lost this game. I don't want to hear the cheers. I don't want to hear all that stuff. Like, we're here to win basketball games. And that's the way Coach K has always been. It's never been the publicity. It's never been, I'm here at Duke. This is who I am. It's like, no, I'm here to win. And that's why he took the job at Team USA, because he wanted them to win gold. And that's why it's been his mentality the entire time. So the special treatment, I feel like, is something that he doesn't want. The media, I'm sure, does that. But like in our age, it seems like now everything is so much more amplified in sports. I mean, we're talking everybody's getting some sort of memoriam, a statue at their own college for what they did in college, regardless of what they did in the NFL. I mean, frankly, this is probably a perfect, like Baker Mayfield, for example. He's getting his statue at Oklahoma. How did some people feel like that if it was 20 years ago, right? If there was somebody else in that scenario, it's like, okay, Bo Jackson didn't get his statue for how many years? Now why are we giving Baker one after 5, you know? So that's kind of a hard situation now to comprehend. Is like what exactly the coach wants, but what the media wants as well. And now that's always conflicting, it seems like, and then there's always just the arguments about it.
I'm pretty sure Dosumu already has his number retired at Illinois.
Exactly. It's like we're so quick to honor in this in just where we are as a society, and it's kind of interesting how that has all just kind of transpired. But it's just crazy. But I mean, at the end of the day, Coach K and Duke, they're just looking at Texas Tech, which can be a fantastic game, by the way. Two polar opposite teams. Duke's going to want to go out and run in transition. Texas is going to want to slow that game down to 50s in probably score-wise, but going to be some great games. I mean, Arizona-Houston is one I'm certainly going to be watching. Houston's defense has just been awesome every single year, and I think I slept on them too much this year. I know I picked UAB, but that was just the one I thought was not going to happen. There's no way it would, so it would, because it's March Madness. So, but my gut was right, and I wish I would have stuck with it. But I think one of the biggest games, guys, UCLA and North Carolina, not Baylor. Dude, I mean, the Tar Heels, man, I'm
excited to see this one. Yeah, Tar Heels are just. I knew, especially when they beat Duke going into that game, that was going to be the boost that they needed to go into the tournament, especially them probably going to the most hostile arena in college basketball for that game. The biggest Coach K's farewell. It's a massive rivalry game. Like this is where you want to play, and you're able to go up there and upset them. You play really well against Marquette, almost over a 30-point margin of victory when it's only one seed difference, 8 and 9, and you go up against Baylor, who's defending national championships, trying to make it back to it, and you go beat them 93-86. I don't know. North Carolina just rolling so much right now that I don't think UCLA is going to be on top. Even though they're the 4 and 8 seed, I don't think North Carolina is going to lose this one.
Yeah, I was surprised they beat Baylor because I remember Michigan State played Baylor earlier in the season. They looked unstoppable. Mm-hmm. So, and being defending national champs, of course, that comes with, that respect there. But who's the guy with the beard or whatever? That guy, he's a funny looking dude. But every time,
what guy?
What's his name? I don't know. He's the
redheaded guy.
Yeah, he looks like he's Amish.
I don't know who it is, but that guy's a walking bucket, I swear.
A walking bucket. Oh my god.
You reminds me of that dude on YouTube who makes all those basketball workout contraptions out of wood and stuff.
LeBron James.
I know what you're talking about. Isn't it Meyer, whatever his name is? Yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, but he's ridiculous.
That's a funny description. But I mean, that game, certainly one thing, the fouls was ridiculous. I mean, I think there was over 50, 60 fouls in that game, but I mean, nonetheless, it's going to be fantastic. And I mean, really, you look at what Baylor's done, and I mean, they got guys banged up all year, and that was one of the reasons I didn't want them to repeat. I feel like I've just naturally now become a Baylor fan after last year. Maybe I'll get a T-shirt, maybe not. Maybe I'll wait till next year. But I mean, they did me due diligence in a lot of my brackets last year, so I do pay tribute to them. So, but I mean, you got to give credit to North Carolina. I mean, they're just playing unstoppable basketball right now. They're filling it. They're efficient offensively. Defensively, they're forcing turnovers. They're making big plays when they need to. They're just playing basketball like exactly what you want. The only thing that you would be a little concerned about is, they gave up a 25-point lead to let that game go into overtime. Yeah. But we know Scott Drew's teams always have a tendency to claw back regardless of what game it is. So you can let that kind of slide for a little bit. But, I mean, UCLA also is going to be a tough test. Johnny Juzang, that crew, that backcourt's going to be looking to fill it. So going to be interesting to see how North Carolina, I think, and Herbert Davis really adjust to see if they might try to let that game play more inside. Because if they do, I think North Carolina would be heavily favored in that game. But I think probably probably the most surprising matchup on this docket. I mean, we have Kansas and Providence. That game kind of speaks for itself chalk-wise, as well as Gonzaga, Arkansas. But Miami and Iowa State, the 11 and the 10. Auburn and Wisconsin both go down. Now we have the Cyclones and the Hurricanes, a battle of natural disasters. Are going to be on the floor on Friday night. And I think that's going to be an interesting game because nobody expects them to be here. So, hey, give it a whirl.
I honestly didn't think Iowa State was going to make it past LSU and Miami. I knew they were probably going to beat USC, but against Auburn, I had no shot that they were going to make it past there. But they have just been playing like pretty solid. I mean, putting up almost 80 points against Auburn, who is typically a pretty solid defensive team, is really impressive. So I think the one thing Iowa has to work on is just getting points on the board because they have not scored over 60 at this tournament. And for Miami, who can hold teams to low points, I think Iowa's going to struggle with that. So that's the one thing that they got to do. But I don't know. Iowa State just has something about them that I like. But I think Miami's probably going to take this one, especially with how well they've been able to hold teams to low points so far.
Yeah, Iowa State, what I love so much, and that was one of the reasons I picked them to get to this point. I did not have them playing Miami, I'll tell you that. That one would surprise me. But I think it's just defensively, man. They know how to step it up against the big-time scorers. Because, I mean, you look at guys like Davidson, Johnny Davis, and you're like, man, those guys can fill it. I can respect them. I mean, obviously, as a Michigan fan, we still have some beef going on from there, but I've moved on from that. And they're still a good team. But, I mean, Johnny Davis just seems like ever since he got banged up in that Big Ten tournament, he's not been the same. And he really wasn't in this game, and it was unfortunate to see. But, I mean, Iowa State, man, you got to give them credit. I mean, they held LSU to 54 points, and then they come back and they beat Wisconsin in dominating fashion last week. I think the final was somewhere around, wasn't it around like 60 to low 50? I think it was in that point. I'm trying to find it, but my
that means
screen
Brad
just
Davidson's
crashed
gone,
right now.
right? Forever.
That I think means Brad Davidson is gone forever. I think. End quote.
Good riddance.
I'm pretty sure that's correct. But, I mean, it was 54-49. I just made sure. So, I mean, that shows it right there. I don't even have to put up other stats to bring and support that point. Defensively, they're fantastic, and they really do a great job of deflecting passes. They're able to get in the lane, and they're able to force tough shots. It's what Wisconsin really hasn't been able to do this year is, I mean, you have guys like Johnny Davis and Brad Davidson that can make plays, but when those guys aren't hitting, there's not a whole lot else. A lot of the guys around in offense, spot-up shooters, they're not create-your-own-shot type of guys. So, I mean, certainly when those guys started struggling, they didn't have any source of offense. So, Iowa State, they're kind of pulling the Texas Tech motto. You know what? Defense can get yourself to a championship game, and maybe they're going to follow that all the way through. But, I mean, they certainly have a favorable matchup, I would say, against Miami, who's a team that we did not expect to be here. But some stellar play. They kept it rolling, and nothing short of greatness right now. They might be moving on to the Elite Eight. There's a 50-50 shot, really, I think, in this one.
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a pretty solid game. I'll probably watch that one other than the Michigan game. That's the one I'm looking forward to most.
Of course, Michigan is going to be a game I certainly watch against Villanova. It's going to be a rematch. I mean, we played them in San Antonio a couple years ago. It didn't go our way, but now it's a new year. It's a new season. Let's get after it. But I will say this: if Michigan wins it all this year, I'm not going to say that this will happen. This would totally be the year to do it because nobody expects them to win it all this year. It's like the perfect storm. Like, nobody's even going to be looking forward to, like, when last year we were actually being picked, it was kind of like, oh, now, it's like, now we might not win. It's like, yeah, we have people like, yeah, Auburn's going all the way. Kentucky's going all the way. Baylor's going to do it. And they're like, oh, yeah, those teams are sitting down after 2 weeks of basketball. Like, you have a better chance going into the tournament not being a selected Final Four team to make it there, just because that's the virtue of March Madness.
That's true.
So I would say that would be fun. But there was one thing that happened over the weekend in these games that I wondered about your guys' opinion with this, and I know a lot of the fans have seen it. The situation in the Illinois-Houston game where there was a technical foul given for what did not look to be a technical foul. And a lot of Fighting Illini fans are saying that is the reason they lost the game. You guys know what I'm talking about?
No.
You do not know what I'm talking about?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, what game was it again?
So this is Illinois-Houston. I believe there was maybe around like 12 minutes left in the second half. Illinois brought the game to within 4 points on a breakaway dunk. I think it was Melendez that had the fast break slam, and he hung on the rim and swung himself out and then swung back in and landed back on the floor. But during that sequence, the official teed him up for hanging on the rim I don't know if he officially declared it, but the only thing I could think of is like excessive celebration, which clearly he could not. Reggie Miller had some beef with that one as he was on the broadcast and was verbally saying absolutely not multiple times. And I would have to agree with him. I don't know if that was the right call, and I feel unfortunate for Illinois fans. I mean, not as a Michigan fan, but just in this situation because that play, after that whole momentum was stopped, Houston went on, I believe it was like a 28-10 run, and that's how they ended up winning by 15 points. And I really feel bad that event had a huge impact on this game, but I mean, that's just hard for me in that situation to let that go and not say that wasn't a factor because those type of plays, those momentum breakers can really derail a whole way that the game is like flowing. And I don't think that's like, obviously, I'm the big component of one play doesn't determine the outcome of a game, but I mean, it's hard to get around on for Illinois, that's such a streaky team. We know that already. They could win 15 games in a row or we'll lose 7 in a row. That's really how it goes. So, and I mean, that's really what killed them in the end. It's just that streakiness. They relied on a little bit too much, and unfortunately, that play pretty much derailed their season almost.
Yeah, I don't really think I'm watching it right now, and I don't think that's warrants a technical foul because the thing is he's already on the fast break and he's like got that momentum to go for it. And I think I've never had that before because I can't like dunk at all, but like I think when you are throwing it down, like you need to make the decision of like when to let go. And like if you make the time to let go at the wrong time, like his legs could have just swung out from under him, and like he could have hurt himself on the way down. So like you want to make sure that you land correctly. And I think that refs too are a little bit soft with the what constitutes a technical, because some refs just want you to like as soon as you put it in just let it go, but some refs will kind of let you hang on a little bit. And I mean, there was, I think against Texas, or what was it, when TCU was playing, one of their dunks was like hanging on pretty excessively and then they let go and they didn't call it. So I think that's the one thing is like you need to have like a whole like talk about what actually constitutes having a technical foul when it's a dunk, because it's tough to discern whether it's just for like the player's safety, so that way they don't land weird and land where they could be injury. But it's also like you definitely know when something is excessive. Everybody knows it's a consensus thing when something's excessive, like when somebody's shaking the rim or something. But that it's like, oh, he dunked it and he's just swinging back so he doesn't have to fall. Like it's pretty simple. But I don't know. I think there's a set like criteria for what's too excessive, and there's sometimes where just people don't really talk about it.
Yeah, you watch the video, and I hate to like just live in the past for that moment of time. If you were watching that play and you saw him swing, and then they called the technical foul basically as he was coming back to the floor, it was so clear he was trying to get back. He swung himself even farther to get back on defense faster. And I would have totally agree with what Reggie Miller had to say on it, and it was exactly what you said, Joe. Like, you swing that much momentum forward because he was sprinting down the floor. There was a guy chasing him. You're sprinting all the way down the floor to slam it. And if you swing and you try to let go too fast, I mean, you're on your head. That's concussion protocol.
Well, not only that,
your tournament's almost over.
If you swing far enough, it's like you kind of have you run into the pad, but then that makes it even worse where like you can mess something up.
You are not landing on your feet, and you cannot control what's going to happen in that scenario.
We need to have refs that can dunk so that way they can decipher it themselves.
Yeah, that's what we need. But in that scenario, it was just a really tough call. And I mean, obviously that one came into a lot of different ones that didn't necessarily need this argument, but of course, because the nature was in the game, it just had a whole mess of that. But I think in the reality, it's just there was no intent and it was just too quickly called. I think they had to let that one just go past, because I think you're right, Joe, that there's no distinct element of what is taunting, what is excessive, and what is not, because there's reality of some people they would express that taunting measure more than others, and some people wouldn't do it necessarily on the rim, and they wouldn't necessarily do it when they get back to the floor. But either way, Illinois, They just haven't found a way to get past week one. So I think that's really kind of hard for fans now just to see something like that possibly derail it. But, I mean, in reality, they still could have won that game. I mean, Houston was playing good defensively, but they were missing some shots, and they could have easily kept that run going. But too streaky of a team, and now they're gone once again.
Mm-hmm. Hate to see it.
You hate to see it, right?
You really do.
Yeah. Illinois, just don't pick them. honestly, just don't pick them at this point. If you want to be disappointed, sure, you can pick them again. But until they make a long run in March Madness, I'm staying away. I just don't think that team is in that position to make a run yet. And it's kind of sucks now because, there's 2 Big Ten teams left. We started with 9. Now we have 2. So that just sucks for our conference. But it's going to be a fun week of March Madness coming up. There's a lot of great games coming up. You can find the schedule all online. And you can follow our bracket picks as well. I think Joe's beating me right now at the moment. I'm staring at you across the room. But we're certainly going to be fun to see how this all plays out. But finishing up the show, we're now going to the Diamond. Spring training is in session. We're having baseball finally. What a great time it is to see players on the field finally. No chain link fences around the outside with locks on the gates. Is it literally? Do you think they went to that measure at some point, or it was just kind of understood that, stay off the field?
I don't know, but the picture of chained up glove or chained up baseball industry is devastated by this news. I didn't know there's so many stock photos of padlock baseballs out there.
Yeah.
It was a different one every time. I was honestly impressed.
Yeah, Getty Images has now lost $3 million worth of endorsement photos that they cannot use anymore. But no, I think it's just great to see everybody back, and a lot of big faces and a lot of new places too. And right now we're seeing free agency. I think starting to taper off a little bit now. That's post lockout, it was in a frenzy when you saw guys like Chris Bryant getting moved, and obviously Carlos Correa is now officially found out he's going to Minnesota of all places. And what a great time to pick. What was it, last Tuesday night at 1 a.m? It's a great time to make a decision, I guess. But
I hope he can pitch too, because they got nothing.
No,
they lost out on every pitching free agent. Unless they trade for Minaya or Montas from Oakland, they got nothing. And one of those even got hurt in spring training the other day. So he better be 5 RBIs a game, or they're not going to win many games.
Yeah, here's the thing I see on this scenario, and I know whereas we as Tigers fans, that's kind of where I feel obligated we can talk about this, because obviously we were one of the teams in the hunt for Carlos Correa, obviously with the AJ Hinch connection. He signed a 3-year deal with 2 opt-outs after year 2, or after year 1 and year 2. That tells me he doesn't want to be in Minnesota.
Well, it tells me that he wants to be a free agent in a year where there's not 5 other elite free agent shortstops.
Yeah, he does not. It's kind of interesting because, and that almost tells me nobody was willing to give him that much money either, because obviously he would have signed a long-term deal. I think if he would have been in it, but obviously that it would not having other guys like Trevor Story or Corey Seager in the mix would definitely make it easier for him to get that big deal. But Minnesota, of all places, man. Minnesota, of all places. You're right. I don't they're not that great of I don't see them as a contending team in the AL Central whatsoever. And that's taking Tigers bias completely out of the picture because they don't have any pitching.
I do think it's hilarious that the Yankees paved the way for their own downfall in the Correa sweepstakes, because they traded for Donaldson. They took $50 million off the books for Minnesota. And they needed a shortstop because they Isaiah Kiner-Falefa or whatever. Who would you rather have, Correa or Kiner-Falefa? And they just completely paved the way for the Twins to come in and get the much better shortstop.
Mm-hmm. It's so weird to me. But on some of the other deals that were made post lockout, I know Trevor Story one that was probably the most recent that everybody's heard about, 6-year deal with the Red Sox. I thought that was a pretty interesting deal. And then obviously we got some other guys that made some signings as well. I thought one of the more underrated ones was Seiya Suzuki going to the Cubs. I think that's a really interesting deal because he got the 5 years from Hiroshima that he was playing before over there. So, but really, I don't think you see that as a top free agent signing until we have a Shohei Ohtani show up. And now look how the effect it's having on the league of now we're starting to give some of these international players huge contracts. And I think that's kind of cool to see now that the league is sort of expanding and not necessarily just inviting these players in, but hey, you're one of the best. We'll pay the big bucks. That's cool to see.
They had that a little bit before with, I don't know if y'all remember Daisuke Matsuzaka and the mythical gyro ball. The Red Sox gave him a boatload of money.
That ended up not being a pitch that was...
Tanaka got some good money.
Tanaka was,
there's always been a couple of those deals, but obviously, Shohei is made the market a little bit better for those Japanese players, like Ichiro especially also made.
Yep, that's a good one. I think like even just the legacy that some of those players have left, like Ichiro for sure is probably the number one on the list as far as
Hideki Matsui.
Yep, Matsui was another one as well. I mean, even like everybody kind of paved the way in that scenario, and I think with baseball we don't see like it's a completely international game because I mean, how much percent of the league is from the Dominican, Cuba, South America, where we kind of like adopt that into like, yeah, that's normal. And then we kind of see like when somebody comes over from like Japan, for example, it's like, oh, that's a whole new thing, which is kind of weird to me because it's like in the reality, they're not from the States. Like what is actually considered international in this scenario? Because everyone's like, oh, this is a big international free agent signing or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, I totally get that he's coming from a non-major league team, but just it's kind of weird how they perceive it that way, how it's kind of adopted into baseball, that is a part of us. That section south of us is like connected already in the league, which some of them have been in the systems and that makes sense. But, just the wording of it is just kind of, it's kind of interesting. But a lot of great moves have been made. And of course, as Tigers fans, I think that we've made some pretty good moves right now. Of course, we have Tiger fan Mags on the show to hear his thoughts as well. But Baez, Eduardo Rodriguez, a lot of great players as well that we signed for our lower deals. I know we signed Chaffin just a couple of weeks ago. We mentioned on the show. What are your overall thoughts here overall the first couple of weeks of spring training?
I'd say the biggest one, the signings are great, don't get me wrong, but I'm really interested to see what Matt Manning does this year. Last year before the season, he had a nasty bout with COVID, lost like 20 pounds, because before that he was hitting triple digits at times. And so, you look at his numbers from last year in the majors, not all that great. But you have to keep in mind the whole bout with COVID and his velocity was way down. His last start last year he was lights out.
Yeah.
And he's already touched 96. It was yesterday. He faced a loaded Blue Jays lineup, 2 innings, 1 hit, 2 strikeouts. So I'm really excited to see what he does this year. Pineda too. I'm glad we have an actual fifth starter.
That was what I was going to mention as well.
Nothing against Tyler Alexander, but I do like him in the swingman role.
Yes.
He can come out, pitch a couple innings. He can start for you on a given day, and that's valuable. That's valuable to have in the back of your pen. I'm glad that we don't have to waste a starter spot on him necessarily. And we'll see what the bullpen does because Funkhauser's actually out. He's not going to start the season with them. He's got a lat issue, so he won't be there. But you got Soto, you got Chafin, obviously, Fulmer. We'll see what Cisnero does this year. There's a couple of other interesting guys like Will Vest. The Mariners picked him as a Rule 5 pick last year, but then, interestingly enough, he got returned because if you send him to the minors and they don't spend the whole year on the major league roster, they got to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And he was up to 97, I think, in his outing so far this spring. So we'll see how the bullpen fares. So there's definitely opportunity. I mean, the teams in the league definitely, in the division, got better. Kansas City got Greinke back. White Sox lost. Who was it? Fulmer? Who was the other guy? I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. He went to San Francisco. Threw the no-hitter last year.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I
don't know why I'm blanking on this, but they signed some bullpen pieces. It'll be interesting. Cleveland still got Bieber, but they're slowly tearing down. And yeah, it'll just be interesting to see who steps up. Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson have an excellent chance to make the team out of spring training this year. And Miggy's all for it. Miggy said he can't wait for them to be up. Because he likes to play first, likes to be out there, but he's like, I'll DH all the time if we can get Torkelson's bat in the lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Torkelson is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
Torkelson's crazy.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you mentioned that fact because the fact that Miguel's on board with this, I think should open people's eyes of, holy cow, these guys are good. Like, they are really good. Him and Riley Green, I think, honestly, the whole perception I've seen out of the couple games is like, yeah, they're starting in April. Like, we need to get them in the lineup ASAP. So, I mean, that's really good to see. I mean, especially with some of those guys being higher picks. I mean, obviously we had Torkelson at the top of, was it 2 years ago's draft? So good. I mean, that 2-year turnaround's already pretty impressive because it takes a lot of guys longer than that too. But I'm glad you also mentioned Tyler Alexander move. I think like a lot of people were like, yeah, Michael Pineda's like, all right. But I think that's exactly what we were looking for, is we need a guy that can be our fifth guy. Because I think Tyler Alexander is the perfect guy to put in that scenario, because he has a lot of range as far as what he can do. He can come in for an inning or two, and then he can stretch it out to 5 if need to. And I think that's one of his biggest strengths. Like, you don't start Don Kelly in right field, right? You know what I mean? You keep him at the utility spot. Let him come in and do what he does best and fill in at every other position. And in this case, for Alexander, need him in the bullpen? Okay. You need him to start up because obviously Pineda's been hurt part of the season. So he's going to get those opportunities, I'd see, down the road. But I mean, I think the biggest thing going into this season, obviously the youth, how much it's going to translate up to the majors when we got those guys. But I mean, we still got a lot of good veterans on the team. And I mean, especially like the addition of Tucker Barnhart, I think hasn't been talked enough. Yeah, I mean, that guy's awesome. He's got a Gold Glove. So he's going to be great to see back there. And I mean, obviously we moved on from Grayson Griner. Where did he end up in? He went down to a minors organization wherever he was. I think it was like the D-backs or something. I think signed him. But I think that this season right now is going to be really I wouldn't want to say like the cornerstone, because I feel like last year really was the cornerstone of like, here's where we can get in a year. Now let's build off of that and move forward. But right now, this kind of feels like the year of like, here come the young guns. Let's see what we really got. Like, this is the year that everybody's kind of like opening their eyes like, holy cow, yeah, this is a team that could win the division, and anything less than that, I mean, really is that a step backwards almost in a sense, because the hype right now going through the ceiling, and there's no stopping that going up to opening day.
And of course, you also have to remember some other good things we got going for us. Like Jake Rogers, he might be on the DL right now. He just had Tommy John, but he's going to come back eventually. We'll see where he fits in. You got Spencer Turnbull, who still on the team. Again, Tommy John. So we'll see how he comes back. And if he comes back, he'd be a huge asset. And then last year's draft guys, too. I'm excited to see them in the minors this year. I think people forget about Jackson Jobe and Tiley. Yeah. You think about the top two in Green and Torkelson. You don't even think about, like, Jobe already has elite RPMs on his slider. Like, this guy if
he could spin it. There's
risk there, but if he reaches his ceiling, guy could be like lights out. And then you also have like guys like Dylan Smith and Ty Madden down there who we didn't get to see. No, we've not seen any of these guys pitch yet. And so I'm excited to see what they do in the minors this year, including guys like Reese Olson too. We got for Daniel Norris, Joey Wentz, who was making his way back from Tommy John last year. And now he's got more time. He's had more time to recover, because we're going to need those depth guys to come in when, Pineda gets hurt or whomever gets hurt. And then also Alex Faedo, who was a first-round pick in 2017, I think. And he also had Tommy John. So
he's never really been given a chance, I feel like. He's got a lot of potential.
When he the rotation in Erie, like 2-3 years ago, was him, Mize, and Manning. And he led the league in strikeouts over Casey Mize and over Matt Manning. So,
and then pretty much when he was about ready to, and then boom, injury happens.
Exactly, yeah, injury happened in the small camp during the COVID year. So we'll see what happens. Like, even if he doesn't start, it could be a relief piece, could be a trade piece. There's a lot of things. We're to the point where we can consider trading some of these guys for some major league talent. We'll see how we are at the deadline. But, I mean, with the playoffs being expanded to 12 teams, anything could happen this year.
Man, we can make the playoffs.
There's a possibility.
I think there's a legit possibility.
Could. I don't know. I really like the way we're shaping up. It's just we gotta play the right people at the right time, and that's like what usually happens with young players and stuff. You don't want to put them in too early, so that way it's just like all this pressure is on them, but you want to also not make it so that way they're just like not ready because you held them back for so long, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just kind of find that sweet spot. And I think, honestly, if you have Miggy, one of the greatest Detroit Tigers ever play in the organization, saying, yeah, bring these two guys up, we're going to be really solid. And everything that you're saying, Adam, with, we got a bullpen that's starting to look all right. not terrible. I think that's going to be pretty solid too, especially when trade deadline comes around.
Yeah, much better than it has in years past. I will say that for sure. But yeah, I mean, obviously the depth pieces as well that we saw like last year. I mean, we got guys like Akil Badu. Where's he gonna be? Where's Robbie Grossman gonna be? We got other guys in there too, like Derek Hill, Victor Reyes. Maybe might come in there a little bit. We'll see, obviously. But like, where will those guys fit in? And obviously, we have so much flexibility as well. And I think that's just going to be really interesting to see how it comes around. So it's going to be an exciting opening day because I think there's just a lot of high hope in Detroit right now across all sports. And I think that's really translating over. And I think we're starting to see the foundation being built. And obviously with the Tigers, it just came a lot faster and we're expecting a lot more much quicker. So going to be a fun road to the World Series 2022. Let's get it rolling in April, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Tigers win the World Series this year, 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Book it.
100%.
On the sticky note, on the door.
Lock of the day.
Lock it in.
Lock it.
Boy.
Bet on it. Bet on my pick.
Bet on my pick. Don't bet on my picks unless you win, then bet on my picks, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. What a great episode we had. Thank you so much to Adam for joining us and obviously getting us his qualified expertise on the subject. We appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
So, Joe, until next time.
Take care, everybody.